him, but I hate him. But I love him, but I hate him. Hey, it's Allie. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. And today we are talking about Reigen. No, not that Reigen. 2022, Tumblr's almost sexy man. You know, I don't really know whether it's a blessing or a curse that he didn't win, considering the alternative that did win. But no, I just finished Mob Psycho, and yes, I did cry. Like when the theme song for the final season leaked on Twitter during AX and I saw this part, I knew I was going to be in for an emotional roller coaster. But ever since the show's conception, time and time again, the internet has, whether for a joke or for real, simped over Reigen. And I really want to talk about why today, especially after watching the characters and how they treat Reigen, and the fandom itself also treat Reigen. Like, he's like baby girl now for some reason. I really wanted to ask myself why, and especially after finishing the show, I really wanted to talk about that today as part of a little character analysis, as well as kind of a review of the ending of the show. So spoilers ahead, obviously. If at any time you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe, because I make videos like this all the time. And comment down below if you're a Reigen simp, because I in the beginning, I feel like it started out, as most things do, as a joke. Started out very ironically, and now here we are. So let me know down in the comments below, and let's jump into it. So firstly, I want to talk about the in-show canon. It's very obvious that Reigen is a con man. They never try to sugarcoat it. You know, right off the bat, as soon as he's introduced, what he is, what his character is, there's no hiding that. And I actually really like that, because it's not like we as the audience were duped. And same with obviously Mob being the character that he is. That was kind of the angle that they were playing at least in the first season, is oh, he's taking advantage of this child, and this poor child has no idea, whereas everyone else around him knows that Reigen is this con man, and Mob is just oblivious to it all, or at least so we think in the first season. And it sets up a really good character for Reigen, because it's you are good to Mob, you are a good person to Mob, but at the same time you're still a con man, and you're still dragging this child along with your con man, and that already sets up this morally gray thing. And also low-key this ticking time bomb, because we know at some point that has to be one of the biggest contentions, right, of the show, is at some point Mob has to learn that he is a con man, and that he's not really psychic, and this, that, the third. And this is all in the first season, by the way. All during the first season, I'm just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know what I mean? I'm waiting for especially once you get a grasp on Mob's powers and how it's connected to his emotions and his repressed emotions and all that, you're bro, it's a ticking time bomb. You know that at the end, when it finally happens, it's gonna explode. And so that's kind of waiting with bated breath as it relates to Reigen. It's always this undertone. No matter how much good Reigen does to Mob and mentors him and teaches him, there's always this underlying ticking time bomb, which gives you conflicting emotions about him. And of course, the way that he acts as a con man, you're just he's kind of pathetic. You're just kind of bro, you're using this child and using his abilities and his powers to, make yourself and give yourself a head, when in reality we would call that a pathetic man, which most people did in the beginning. We were this man is pathetic, but it's used as comedic charm, so it's funny. And then also at the same time, he's somehow charming. And then so as a joke, I feel outside of the show, outside of the canon, the fandom was just kind of oh, we're gonna just teehee, that's my baby girl, just as a joke. And I think that's just how it started. It just started out as a ironic joke, because that's just the type of character that he is. He's weirdly charming despite being a con man and kind of pathetic. And then the second season happens, and Reigen gets completely exposed, and everyone knows that he's a fraud. And of course Mob finds out, and this is where a lot of the theories and stuff come in, because it's I like to believe, honest to God, that Mob knew the whole time. I think at some point in Mob's life, because we are told that Mob has known him since he was a little kid, and Mob is a very smart kid. He's not dumb. He just thinks the best of people, and he can be a little naive, but he's, especially towards the end of the show, his emotional intelligence builds throughout the entirety of the show. So by the time the show ends, he's pretty smart and pretty emotionally intelligent. So I feel at some point, a part of that emotional intelligence growth was him realizing that Reigen was a fraud. Of course, season 2, but I would like to believe that he knew even before season 2. And in fact, it even was kind of implied during season 2, the end of season 2, that he kind of already knew. He kind of already knew, and he was still going to support him anyway, which is why in season 3, when season 3 happens, it's so important that Reigen actually comes out and says it. That's the biggest thing in season 3, which I'm gonna get to that in a second. But it's important for Mob, for him to come out and say it. Now, this is not gonna be a deep dive on Mob, because then I'd have to get into psychology, and I ain't got that much time to do research. But like, it's so important for Mob that his mentor, he still sees him as a mentor, and that's clear. And I think after season 2 specifically, both in the show and the fandom, everyone was like, he's kind of all right. Like, he's really, in reality, not really hurting anybody, but he's still, you know, the comedic, like, pathetic kind of man. But at the same time, he still has this like heart of gold, which is what I think is a part of being this pathetic man, quote unquote, or at least in anime, the kind of trope of being a pathetic man, at least to the fandom, and why the fandom would simp over pathetic men in anime. That, and otherwise, if you knew these men in real life, it's one of those things where it's like, usually they are a mentor figure, not all the time, but usually there's some type of mentor figure, and they act like either a snob, some type of egotistical or weird charm to them. And then they have this heart of gold. So they're very annoying on the surface. If you didn't know anything about them, you'd just be like, you are annoying. But once you really get to know them and their character, and especially being a mentor in the state that they are, you start to realize, maybe he's all right. Maybe he's all right. There's a lot of characters, anime characters specifically, that fit into that mold. And Reigen is like the king. He's the baby girl king of all of them. So speaking of which, let's take a break to talk about the fandom now. So at this point, before getting into season 3, I want to talk about the fandom. If you have been on any tweet or Tumblr at all in the last 5 years since the show aired, then you know how down bad everyone is for Reigen. But like I said before, Reigen is not an anomaly with this case. Like, lots of pathetic anime men who in real life you wouldn't even give the time of day, or you probably call the cops on, in anime are suddenly like baby girl, and you're the best character ever, and they're usually like greasy, pathetic ass men. Now, this list is not exhaustive, and some of these fit into different types of pathetic men. For example, the first one I have on here is Aki from Chainsaw Man. He's pathetic, but not in the way of like not in the same way that Reigen is pathetic, okay? He's pathetic in the sense of like, he's very like, you know, I'm sticking to this, I need to do this, I'm so dutiful and sticking to my like guns and my little mission that I have. Now, I read the Chainsaw Man manga, go watch that video, so I know the reasonings of why he is the way that he is, don't worry. But because he is the way that he is, it comes off as slightly pathetic. Same with honestly Denji, but like Denji's a kid, so I'll give him a pass. Other characters include Sanji from One Piece, Gojo, Toji from JJK. Honestly, most men from JJK, except for Nanami. Like, Nanami is like, unless they're children, I don't count their children, but like most of the men adults, which is why like a lot of people are like, oh, Jujutsu Kaisen has to be written by a woman, because like the way they write the men in this show. But definitely Toji and Gojo. Toji, oh god. Like, despite Goji, oh my god, despite Gojo being one of the biggest like characters in the show and like probably the most powerful in the show, he still like is so pathetic for like every other aspect of his life, which is so funny, and the author like constantly harps on that over and over and over again. More characters include Yamcha from Dragon Ball Z, Hidan from Naruto, Hawks from My Hero Academia, Okaiwa from Haikyuu, Victor from Yuri on Ice, James from Pokemon, Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop, Joseph Joestar from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Howl's from Howl's Moving Castle. The list goes on and on and on. And these, like, I know I hurt some of y'all's feelings just now. So take a deep breath. It's okay. I know I called some of your faves pathetic, but like, let's think about it. Let's think about it for a second. Especially someone like Howl, like, started off very pathetic, and like, but he's such baby girlified by the entire fandom and Studio Ghibli fans and everything. Despite the fact that like in real life, if he acted the way that he acted towards you, you know, you would not give this man a second thought. Also, a lot of these people are conventionally attractive, which is what makes Reigen stand out, because he low-key isn't. But yet all of the like promotional art and like official art try their hardest, and that's what's like half of the joke, is that he's not conventionally attractive by like anime standards. That's like a lot of the charm of Mob Psycho in a lot of different ways, but he's by like the rest of anime standards, and a lot of the men that I listed on this list, like, he is not conventionally attractive, and that's part of the appeal. Honestly, that's a lot of appeal for Tumblr in general. If you want a rule for what makes a Tumblr sexy man: middle-aged man, pathetic. That's about it. Slight heart of gold, sometimes dubious morals. and boom, you got yourself a Tumblr sexy man. So Reigen just fit in there so nicely and so neatly. And because he's not conventionally attractive, I think that in terms of anime, obviously he is like pleasing to look at because it's anime, but because of that, like I'm just thinking of all the fan art people have drawn making him conventionally attractive, which is so funny to me. But even the like main art put him in these precarious situations, almost like they know. It's almost like they know what's going on in the fandom, and they're like, yeah, we got you, we see you, we're gonna give you something. But yeah, the fandom has like latched onto him so much. But I wonder if he was a completely like bad guy. I feel like it would have been too cliche for the show. So let's move a little bit back into the show here. I feel like if they were to just make him like, yep, he's a con man, and Mob just didn't know the entire time, I feel like that'd be a very like cut and dry story, right? Where he had to learn that there's bad people in the world and da 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 da. But that was not the story of Mob Psycho. The story of Mob Psycho is accepting yourself and accepting every single part of yourself. And Reigen is this nice foil to Mob because he is actively hiding a part of himself very badly. Like he is literally putting on this mask and this front in front of everybody, despite that fact that most people, even Mob after season 2, knows that he's putting up this front. So when season 3 comes around and we see him still doing the same things, like when because it's been a while since I watched all of season 3 in one sitting, literally like a week ago, and it's been a while since I saw season 2. So when season 2 happened and like Reigen is still doing the same shit that he's always doing, I was really like, did we learn nothing from season 2? Like, why is he still carrying on the way that he's been carrying on, despite the fact that like you literally got exposed in season 2? I don't get it. so it was really like a little bit like, did we backslide on his character? And like, what about Mob? Like, what about that? And then as the season progressed, especially the last couple of episodes, it really kind of dawned on me as his character. Everyone was just kind of just writing him off almost, like he's gonna do what he's gonna do. But as it relates to like Mob was kind of waiting. And if you saw the last season, I hope you're watching this without spoilers, you know? If you saw the last episodes of the last season, then you saw like that was one of the major things that kept Mob like the way that he was towards the end, the repressing of his emotions. Because saying that Mob didn't feel some type of way is probably a lie. Like realistically, if you found out your mentor was a lie and a fraud and you just kind of had to keep that to yourself, you kind of had to push it down for the sake of other people around you. And that was, I think, a big part of what Mob's like inner self was. Would that be considered his ego? Again, see, we're getting into psychology and stuff, but I think that was Mob's ego. Like in terms of like psychology terms and stuff, I think that was his ego. I know very little about psychology, but like thanks to BTS. I'm joking. But anyway, but yeah, I'm just gonna call it his ego. So the ego inside of Mob, who's like, this man is a fraud, and you know he's a fraud, and he's not gonna hold us back anymore, blah blah blah. But in reality, the only person holding Mob back was Mob, which was like, that was poetic. But the being Reigen, oh my god, that scene, Reigen going to try and talk to Mob at the end, like, obviously spoilers ahead. If you made it all this way to the video, spoilers ahead, because I'm literally going to spoil the last episode. So when Reigen was like trying to get to Mob, and he basically, I feel like him getting beat the fuck up by all those rocks and shit was his like karma for all, like, you did use Mob at the end of the day. Like at the end of the day, this is why it's like a kind of a moral gray area, because it's like, while Mob still sees you as a mentor and loves you, obviously, you still used him at the end of the day. Like you still used him to get to your own ends and lied to him this entire time. And even though he knew, and Reigen knew that Mob knew about him lying to him, he still needed to say it. Reigen needed to say it out loud. That is what Mob needed to hear him say it and admit it and apologize for it straight up. So when that actually happened and they were playing all of the flashbacks from like season 1, and then of course that little moment with the gift, like I said, bro, I started breaking down crying because I was like, that's my son right there. That's my son. That's my boy. But yeah, that whole, like, more than anything else, and of course Dimple coming back, because I dead ass thought Dimple was dead. I thought his ass was dead. He flew off into space and I was like, oh, he's dead now. But I'm glad he came back. But Reigen, like, especially apologizing to Mob and like telling him that like, oh, you're gonna be okay, like I believe, like, you accepted yourself, everyone is also going to accept every single part of you, now you need to accept every part of you. And Reigen's like, and I will do the same, basically. girly, I was on the floor crying in fucking tears. Like the fact that Mob's ego held this resentment for Reigen probably this entire time, and deep down inside, and like the fact that Mob pushed those feelings down, because it's like I feel like he, in a sense, we're gonna talk about Mob just a little bit, he probably felt like he had to push those emotions down, because obviously if the emotions come out, people get hurt. That was his trauma, whatever. Well, not whatever, but like that was his trauma. But then also, as it relates to like Reigen, he probably did feel some type of way. He probably felt betrayed. He probably felt like upset. And instead of like dealing with those emotions as they came, because it was probably a really big emotion, he just pushed them down and repressed those emotions. And because of that, that builds up resentment. You know, I'm gonna give you a little advice. It's always better to get all those emotions off your chest, because otherwise it will build resentment over time, and you'll have this resentment building to the point where if you're mad at somebody and you never tell them and you just build resentment, they're gonna do the tiniest little fucking thing and boom, you're gonna fucking explode on them. And like, obviously getting hit by a car is no small feat, but at this point it was probably like Mob's ego was like, this is literally the only thing I want in my life, and I'm gonna go get it. Like, that's probably why he was able to like resurrect himself as Mob's ego. Anyway, point is, as this relates to Reigen, he needed him to say it. Like I said, I'm not gonna keep repeating myself, but he needed him to say it and needed him to step up as that mentor person. And the ego inside of Mob realized that like, oh, this person does care about me, despite all of the wrong that they have done. Like, they do care about me. They always have my best interest at heart anyway. And that was like, that was a moment for me. That was a moment for me. And then he got rejected, which I knew he was going to get rejected. Side note, again, we're going to talk about him for a real quick second. I knew he was going to get rejected because like the girl has no feelings for anybody, let alone Mob. But like, I knew he was going to get rejected. But when he started crying, oh, everybody was surprised too. They were like, oh my gosh, she rejected you? What do you mean? Like, I feel like we all knew he was going to get rejected. Anyway, Mob started crying, and I was just like, that's my son. That is my child. Also, I think that this ending scene really kind of was the culmination of Mob learning to not repress his emotions. Like, normally, like season 1, if he would have gotten rejected, he probably would have just pushed down that emotion and would have been like, oh, I'm okay, which is exactly what he does in the first part of this. He's like, oh, I got rejected, and he's like smiling and he's fine. And then he starts crying, which is like one of the biggest indicators that he has learned throughout all of this, that he needs to actually feel his emotions thoroughly, and that it's okay to be sad about something that, you know, wasn't so great. He got rejected. That's not great. And so he starts crying. And I think that's really like the ultimate show of his character. So why was I crying over this man? At the end of the day, I knew that he was a con man. I knew that he had used Mob, but still at the end, I was rooting for him. And as Mob forgave him, I, as a watcher, also forgave him. And maybe he was never on my bad side despite his dubious morals. So why? Why do the characters forgive him, and why does the fandom simp over him? From a show perspective, it's because deep down in that little rat man, sweaty ass body is a man who cares, a man who helps people, and a man who wants to see Mob grow. He's not that half bad. As for the fandom, well, take all that analysis and add this weird obsession Tumblr has with morally gray, highly confident middle-aged men, and now you understand Tumblr sexy men. Seek help. Don't look over there. Don't look over there. Don't go look at my TikToks either. Don't do that. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You are a real one. Happy New Year. This is my first video of the new year. I definitely want to do more character analysis videos, especially more funny ones like this one. Like, again, like I said with Mob, I don't have the time to like, or the energy to really go in and deep dive with like psychology, but in terms of like things like why we simp over at anime characters, I could talk about that all day long. So if you want to see more like funnier, like lighthearted character analysis of, you know, anime men or just anybody in general, or any show or whatever, like especially shows that we like despite the fact that they're not all that great, like I watch a little bit of trash TV sometimes, but like I feel like there's a lot to say about a lot of different men. So if you want to see anything you want to see from me this year, like leave it down in the comments below. You can reach me on anything. My goal, like I said in my last video, is to start a Discord this year. That's like my goal with this channel, and to get to 10K. I know that's a ways away, but that's my goal for this year, is to get to 10K and start a Discord for everybody. Also, I've been streaming on twitch.tv/AlleyDreamer. So come find me. Usually gonna probably stream on the weekends. I'm really trying to finish Hades, so come find me. You can also find me on any of my social media. They're always gonna be in the description box below. I love you guys. Let's start a conversation in the comments. I hope you had a very happy new year, and let me know how you guys feel about that Discord, if you guys would be down for it, because if y'all are down for it, like right now, I don't care if the Discord has 5 people. If y'all are down for it, I'm down for it. So let me know and I'll get started on that like right away. So anyway, I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.